Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a little late night version of our show. It is the Wrestling Underground podcast. I am your host, as always, Chad Porter. Joining me is the glorious one himself, Marcus Green. Marcus, I just went full Midwestern, just not even pronouncing the R in your name. Marcus, how the hell are you?
Good. Another Monday. More wrestling news to cipher through.
Just another manic Monday. Oh, wish it was Sunday. I hate Sundays. I think it was as a kid. Sundays was always like the day of dread. Because like every minute that ticked by, it was one step closer to
Goes to
school.
Monday. Yeah,
Right?
yeah. And it's gotten no better because now, like, instead of school, it's just life.
Right? Ah.
It's whatever comes with the business day that is officially starts on Monday. It's just like, oh, this day goes by way too fast. The
It's
3 day weekend, the 3 day weekend is not appreciated enough. And still to this day, who came up with this daylight savings BS?
uh and like so many people like it doesn't even work. And you know what? Like I don't disagree. Now, like I'm a fan of getting the extra hour, don't get me wrong. I'm not a fan of losing the hour. Like at all. Especially when I'm spending time with my lady friend. Like, no thank you, sir. I don't want to see that clock go from 1:59 to 3 a.m. No. Why would you do that?
We the only people that do that, like in the state.
Uh I don't think Europe does it. Canada might, because we have the same time zone. I don't know about Mexico.
Yeah.
I think they might as well. I think maybe both continents do. I think maybe. You know what? We need to invent an object, a device, if you will, a application that if we have a question, we can punch it in and it would answer it for us. We'll call it Ogle, and it'll be mostly for boobs.
Oh, so Miss Jeeves.
Ask Jeeves. Marcus, were you old enough to have a day in English class or whichever class it was where they took you to the computer lab to teach you how to look things up on the internet?
We didn't have that, but we did have days when we went to computer lab. Particularly remember in high school, it was for like the graduation exam prep courses.
Mm-hmm.
So we go on there and run a little program that I guess as some form of prep. They called it e-portal, and they had it set up in the library, and because that's where it was. We went to the library. They had it set up to where like the person at the that was at the desk could see what we were doing on our computer. So if we deviated, somebody went looking up like a music site or something, they'd see it and be like, "Up, computer 5, did you help?"
So yeah, in 2001, we actually went to our computer lab to learn how to look things up online. We went to like Ask Jeeves. That was the search engine of the day, and that we had to like look up certain things and like find prompts and like get like a sentence from something just to prove that we did it. At the time, I'm like, this is dumb. I'm never gonna use this. Welp. Mario, that's all I can say. Welp.
Yeah, that was. I remember that being. I remember Jude actually being. I'm like, oh, cool. He looks like Alfred. And I remember when I was in middle school, but then I don't know like how long that he Ask G's even lasted. Cause
It's still around.
yeah, it's just Ask instead of just Ask G's.
Ask.com. What's your question? Who put the bop in the bop shib bop shib bop? Come on, ask. Do your thing. I'm the first person to use your website in a decade. Why are you not searching my question? Ridiculous. Ridiculous. Maybe it's because I have like 1,000 ad blockers on. Maybe that's it. Hang on, let's find out. I want to know who put the bop in the bop shabop shabop. Who put the wham and wham and lamma ding dong? Who was that man? I'd like to shake his hand. Who put the bump berry man? No, you're terrible, Ask. So yeah, it was because I had 1,000 ad blockers on. So daylight saving times. Who observes it? United States, Canada, Europe, one country in Egypt. I think that might be not one country in Egypt. One country in Africa. I think it might be Egypt. Some parts of South America, some parts of Australia, and New Zealand. So there's that. We have more broad examinations, locations. All right, so we have the Bermuda, Bahamas. Come on, pretty mama. I don't think Key Largo celebrates it though, so the song does there. One part of Arizona doesn't celebrate it or recognize it, or Arizona as a whole doesn't recognize it. That's stupid. So, like, are they an hour behind us then?
Who as a whole?
Arizona doesn't. So,
Why
like,
am I-
right now, if you were to go back, because they're in mountain time, so they would be 9 p.m. for all of mountain time, but are they 8 p.m. then? This is stupid. We can't even figure out what time zone time. Fucking end this thing. Speaking of things to end, we're gonna talk about ending Hell in a Cell because it's a stupid fucking concept right now. Before we get there, we got to talk about something that isn't stupid. Rey Mysterio's going to the Hall of Fame because the man's got two brittle broken knees, and Dominic wants to retire him at WrestleMania. Probably, I don't know. Marcus Mysterio going into the Hall of Fame, not even a hesitation. This is a no-brainer. He's first ballot, not just for what he's done in pro wrestling. Um, as a whole, WCW, WWE, Mexico, like he's done it all in this business. But the question is, Marcus, do you think this is the end for the Senor Mysterio?
You cut out. Read that last part. What I feel about it.
Do you think this is the end for Rey Mysterio as an in ring competitor?
No, because isn't Edge in there? He's in there, right?
Right, right.
Several names. I don't think. I mean,
Well, to be fair, he went in when he was retired,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
think
you're
Ric
right.
Flair went in the year he retired.
Yeah, it all depends. I think Ray feels like one of those names that's done when he wants to be done because he's never caused the company any hassle or problems. Damn near model citizen outside of litany of injuries and maybe that thing with that wellness thing at one time. But outside of that, and within the system of WWE, he's a model citizen. So always like you said, 100% agree. First battle Hall of Famer. Gone for days about that. He got the last 2K cover, so that's cool. And now, I mean, and he's kind of spending. I'm guessing was the tail end of his career. Ushering his son into a form of prominence. So, you know, I don't know if this is the last of him. Like I said, I feel like he's gonna be around as long as he wants to physically. Um, but we also know these things are all kind of, at this point, getting in the way of they kind of need names, and they definitely need big names, and he's certainly one of them. Probably in some ways it's overdue, but uh, kind of seems like it's spot on too because it does seem like this is close and near to the end. Um, Even with some of the matches that he's had with Andrade, maybe a couple years back or a year and a half ago or something like that. Um, yeah, we know his knee history, but yeah, I mean this is no brainer, like you said.
It'll be interesting to see what they end up doing with this. After all, they are doing the feud with Ray and Dom. Um, I think there's been some conversations about passing down the mask to Dom. So if that ends up being a thing, then that could be a lot of fun, maybe for Dom. But also, I feel like you can't pass it down when he's a heel because the goal should be for Dom to replace Ray,
Yeah.
and that's why I don't think we're even close to being at the point to make that switcheroo because I feel like you got to bring Dom back to the light. Because him being a beta bitch for Ray Ripley is just not what that mask deserves. So
Yeah, and it's you. You don't want somebody in a luchador mask bragging about being in jail. Like I just, it's weird, weird. And he can't be crybaby unless we see the tear, right? So it's like, like please, Mister, Mister Jailio Holmes, like
that
don't
movie.
make a life, don't make a life out of me, I said.
I spent 29 minutes in the Beverly Hills jail cell. I've
Uh,
seen things. Speaking of
I
seeing
pissed
things,
in, I pissed in a toilet that didn't flush. Don't tell me about hard times.
I mean, it
Uh,
did, but it was broken for the day, and the plumber was just getting there when I was being released.
and then somebody like Dom. Okay, okay, fine. It had low flow. Jesus, had low
So,
flow.
speaking of a little flow, we got to talk about Stone Cold Steve Austin getting another match at WrestleMania. I don't want to see it. The WWE is still pitching matches for Austin, and we're, what, 2 weeks out? Like, I don't know. Like, what's even the point? With the Kevin Owens stuff, there was at least a month worth of build up. Like, this just kind of seems
And
hackneyed.
it also made sense because he technically adopted his move, thankfully as a finisher, not like Cena.
Mm-hmm.
But that made sense. But we saw that match, and it was enough.
I agree. And one of the things that also should point out, like, it was in his home state of Texas. So like you faced Kevin Owens who stole his finisher. You're in the state of Texas. You did the brouhaha and the whatnot, and I feel like we're good. Some people are thinking that L.A. Knight might be the name. I don't know if I want to see L.A. Knight get jobbed out to a 60-year-old Stone Cold. And yes, I will fully acknowledge that if LA Knight was WWE World Champion, he faced Sting, I would absolutely be going on saying yes, 64-year-old Sting should absolutely win the belt. He should win it in 26 seconds by just by like poking him in the nose.
Making
He
a,
flicks the nose and he wins.
of course, Chad making an argument for Sting to win a belt in a match where there is no belt. Um,
Exactly.
but yeah, it's weird. Like that just reeks of desperation. Like obviously in the last regime it'd be like, oh, somebody's got to call Taker out. But thankfully, I think at this point Cena's the moved into that spot.
Mm-hmm.
So, but with the Stone Cold thing, like because I guess they can't get Dwayne. Like Dwayne is like I'm still healing from Black Adam. But yeah, we saw that match he had with Owens, and it was all on Owens. Like people are pop for Stone Cold, they always pop for the stunner and the and the what and middle fingers and the beer of it all, but it's not. You're taking precious time from some like actual act that could be on the show killing it. Like that could be something dealing with Gable, who was long overdue for some main time spotlight situation. But
Mm-hmm.
again, it's Mania. But this overall, this Hollywood card ain't got nothing on their last Hollywood card, which I think was WrestleMania 21,
I think
was
so
one
too.
of the better, probably think top selling Manias of all time. So this one just feel like they're just plodding along, putting stuff together as they go. Certain stuff has long build, but other stuff they're just plodding along, getting through. Like I said, the stuff with like we talked about earlier, the stuff with Lashley and Wyatt. Um, Throwing LA Knight because they know he can carry it with a promo. This the old thing with potentially Stone Cold. it's not, as the kids would say, it's not giving what it's supposed to give.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that looking at this card, it's very heavily infused with the elder talent. You have Trish and Lita already on the card, Brock's on the card, Bobby's on the card. There's a lot of guys that are already pushing 50 in pretty prominent roles. And I feel like Stone Cold just kind of reinforces the narrative that this company can't create talent, or at least stars that can draw. And this just doubles down on that. If you had something in play that made sense for Stone Cold that you've been building up to since December, okay, go for it. Like the Trish and Lita stuff, at least has had 2 or 3 or 4 weeks already. But you're just shoehorning Stone Cold last minute. I feel like that's dumb, especially since like this is supposed to be a big deal. I don't feel like it's a big deal, so I would rather not see it. Speaking of things I don't want to see, Edge will take on Finn Balor, the, the Balder, Finn Balder, at Hell in a Cell at WrestleMania, or as we like to call it here on the show, Heck in a Sec. Edge has been in one Hell in a Cell match. I know he was in WrestleMania 24 versus Taker, and he lost. Or no, that wasn't WrestleMania. SummerSlam of the same year,
Yeah.
and he got power bombed to hell. But like, has this feud really demanded a Hell in a Cell match? Has Hell in a Cell returned to being a match type that we actually want to see? And let's be clear, it hasn't been since like '06. I think they had one good Hell in a Cell match after, and I think it was like Triple H and Taker at WrestleMania. But ever since they made the Hell in a Cell taller in '06, the mystique, the claustrophobia, the trauma that this match type is supposed to bring is just non-existent. It feels more like a giant playpen. So I don't want to see this match. One, it's not a great feud. It doesn't deserve a huge ending like a Hell in a Cell. Two, the Hell in a Cell itself has been so watered down that it's basically just a glass of water at this point. There's nothing else in this. Like we've seen all the spots we can see. Like what else are we gonna do at this point? You oversaturated the match type over the last 16 years because you tried to make a goddamn pay-per-view out of it where you were shoehorning 2 matches per year on the damn thing, and there was no creativity. So I don't want to see it. Marcus, do you want to see Edge versus Balor at Heck in a Sec at WrestleMania Part 2 of LA? Nights 1 and 2, Electric Boogaloo? Very long title.
Yeah, 100% agree with everything you said, and I feel like the way that this has been going at this point, after the whole I Quit situation, you might as well do. It really should head towards a last man standing, but the Hell in the Cells for the mania of it all.
Mm-hmm.
But it really should be last man standing, because didn't he do that with ain't that what he did with Orton? That thing that they did.
Yeah, they did the whole greatest match ever.
Yeah, that whole deal. That thankfully is behind us now. Um, yeah, it's just like you said, don't warn. It's just like one's like it's just something that's been persistent since. Like I don't know what was the thought or idea behind one making Edge the leader, then all of a sudden bumping him out. And I feel like it just the reason why it's persisted as long as it has is because they're trying to make the most of it, and it's made sense because they've been able to bring Beth in, which has been a great thing for Rhea and that whole bit. But this is kind of just something that's been for something for Edge to do, and then they brought in the whole thing with Mysterio and also the Dom situation. So they've been able to infuse things and keep it going, but ultimately it's not again it's not a Hell in a Cell type match, but like you said, on top of them raising the thing to turn it into more of a toy, them turning it into a whole pay per view also lessened it, and it's really not a thing that finishes feuds anymore. It's just something to do to make a feud hotter. You know what I'm saying? So it's You know, like I said, I think the sale of it all is just for Mania, and Balor, they don't have any problems taking major bumps, even though they probably shouldn't. So, um, have at it.
Yeah, I don't. I really don't want to see Edge taking any bumps at Hell in a Cell. I think the whole point of it should be to not making this dude retire faster earlier. Like that seems like a
Yeah,
stupid idea.
yeah,
It's also just not a great feud, so. And
yeah.
Judgment Day's pretty weak.
But to be fair, it could be worse.
Oh,
We
it
could be
could
talking
be
about
worse.
Edge versus Shane in a Hell in a Cell.
I'd rather see Finn Balor versus Shane, because then there's at least some question on who would take the crazy bump. I mean, it obviously still be Shane, but like there'd be some doubt. That's the important part. Speaking of doubt, I'm starting to doubt that Cody Rhodes is a real human being.
No.
I genuinely believe that he's just a robot that compiles data on the internet and spits out very vague yet inoffensive comments to try to win over as many people as possible. We know he solved racism, and we would thank him for that every day. When we think about the great leaders of racial rights, it's Cody Rhodes and everyone else is coming in second. We know that. We know that Cody Rhodes' opinion on Star Wars is infallible because he's Cody Rhodes. So when he says that The Last Jedi is the greatest Star Wars movie of all time, how dare we tell him that it's a giant flaming bag of turds that was done deliberately to piss off Star Wars fans? How dare we suggest such a thing? And then when he says his wife deserves the title almost more than I do, aka as much as I do. Well, we're getting Irish and Barry Allen vibes from The Flash. Where the Flash, Barry? Are you Iris? Are you? No. So, Cody makes an open-ended comment on the Superstar Crossover podcast. Never heard of it. And he basically says that if it wasn't for his wife making a sacrifice, he wouldn't be able to do the thing that he's doing now by pursuing the title. I took that as she became a stay-at-home mom to their daughter so that he could go chase the WWE title. Maybe that's the case. Maybe it is. If that's all it is, though, no, because the WWE title isn't about deserving or earning. The WWE title, all titles in wrestling, are about marketing. We're going to put you as the face of our brand. You are going to be the face of our toy line, the face of our clothing line, the face of our food line, should WWE ever get back into the edibles. You are going to be the face of our product, and we're going to sell more shit because you are the face. That is what the WWE title is. It is not some type of accomplishment. I'm finally the best. In fact, usually the best don't ever win that belt. It's rarer for the best to actually win that belt. You are the most marketable. You are the most purchasable. You are the one who can sell the most dumb shit to improve the bottom line. Brandy Rhodes couldn't even sell women's wrestling to women in a women's only group. Brandy Rhodes doesn't deserve shit, especially the WWE title, because simply put, she can't move shit. Like, she's a fine person. As a human being, I'm sure she exists in a realm where she is inoffensive. But as a wrestling personality, I would not put the defunct 24/7 title in the same carpool as her, let alone the WWE title on her. So for Cody to say such a ludicrous and ridiculous thing for somebody who's been in the business for as long as he's been really makes me think Cody is just an android that says all the right things at all the right times and nothing can ever be truly offensive about that. Except that you realize that Cody's basically just a computer program saying all the right things, and it has no substance or depth to him. The year of him saying to his brother, "I don't need a friend, I don't need a partner, I need a brother," and having us all in tears, that's a long fucking time ago. Because now we know that he's just a robot. Marcus,
And
are you on Cody Rhodes' side here with the my wife deserves the title?
I get the sentiment, but in practicality, no. Uh, and to your point about not even deserving a 24/7 title, channeling my Ron Simmons policy when I say "damn," like because that title is yeah. But there is a fair argument to be made to your point that instead of getting women over during her time in AEW, the person that got over the most because of her was Dan Lambert.
Yeah. And Dan really didn't help her get over so much as he exposed why she never could.
um, yeah, like it was to the point where like I looked forward to seeing her because I knew I'd see him, which I've never looked forward to seeing him, specifically coming off of Impact. So I'm like they transferred an annoyance to me, and then she made it not an annoyance because, to your point, she was more annoying. But um, yeah, I get all the sentimentality when it comes to Cody. It's just because he gets so like what's weird? He almost seems like he's like unintentionally prepping for a like a political run down the line.
I don't think you're wrong. I think you're actually very right about that. I think Cody might be having bigger, more grandiose ideas about his life beyond wrestling. He's in an interracial relationship. He's solved racism. And he's proven that he can lead a company with the world's ugliest tattoo still on his neck.
With America colors on his neck, so he's branded. Um,
And
he has a daughter named Liberty.
he's dating a Brandy. He's
Uh,
branded Brandy with a ring, and now Brandy's branded him with a terrible fucking tattoo.
he's got a dog named is no, that's Henry Cavill's dog. He named Cal, which is beautiful. But
I think Cody's like Shadow.
something to that degree. But yeah, I think we're I think this is our Allison Mack story, but for wrestling. Like we're breaking this years before it actually happens because the way he talks, the way he emotes, where he drums up emotion both for himself and the people listening to him, the way he can damn near crown the man at this point. Um, yeah, it's either political run or all my children or something to that degree. Or should I say young and the rest because all my children no longer a thing. But yeah, he's either going to soaps or a political run. But he's got that in him. Um, like I said, I get a lot of the sentimentality, but sometimes it does dredge on the like somebody get this kid a violin because he yeah.
I think the idea of him trying to put his best foot forward constantly is very accurate, and
Yeah.
it really comes across as disingenuous. And the reason as to why should absolutely come into play because he does come across as somebody who's almost bleached any controversial aspect of his personality. Like
Mm.
it's gone. Why? I don't know. A part of
Yeah.
me might think Marcus that he might be like a narcissist or a sociopath and doesn't even realize he's doing it, or maybe he's intentionally aware of it. So I don't
Man.
know.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it had to do. I mean, that certainly not dismissing your point, but also to your point, I also agreed. Even before we that you made your point about I would assume that what he's talking about now, obviously, just assuming, that it is about Brandy like becoming a stay at home mom because I would imagine when he was in AEW, it was easier because they did less in terms of travel.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an easy fit. Plus, I mean, I think it was practically damn near probably bring your daughter to work day because she worked there too. So that may have been easier. But now with the company more mobile and doing all these house shows and whatnot, because we know WWE is a full time commitment, even with the schedule not being as arduous as it was in decades past, it's still a hell of a schedule. So I'm with you on that thinking. But in terms of his demeanor and maybe on the point of him kind of almost coming off like a one man soap opera, maybe if he didn't do that so often, it wouldn't come off as so phony. Because it's every week with the stuff. Um, but maybe it does. Maybe it comes from him, being lighter. Like he had a interesting relationship with both like his father as a son and with the narrative of who he was as a wrestling persona. He hasn't always been the closest with Dustin because of that. Not the age difference, and obviously Dustin's had his battles over the years, so that was a thing. He didn't leave WWE on the best of terms because that Stardust gimmick was creatively freeing and frustrating for him at the same time. So I think when he that jetted from the company, he had a lot of stuff that he had to get off, and I think he got it off in AEW. And then I think now coming home, on top of being a father, he's found a level of peace with it all. Because I think him doing stuff in spite of a lot of things, now he's doing it for it or for a lot of things. So I think that could have an aspect of it too. But again, to your point, it could also be like I'm going to come off like this prim polished person because I solved racism. Despite that horrendous feud that failed in AEW about America, whatever was going on with that thing. Um, because that's also a part of being a man, right? You're not a problem. You don't see them rushing to put the title on. He wouldn't be getting the type of this type of treatment if he was an MJF type, not in this company, because you couldn't pull what he pulled with that kid in WWE.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
I think you're right in a lot of ways, especially when we talk about like the image and presenting himself in a way. Especially when you think about, just kind of how he's boiled out some of his personality traits over the years. And I look at it like his nickname, American Nightmare, and then I think of American Psycho, and I see a lot of like ringing similarities between the way Cody Rhodes speaks about things and the way Patrick Bateman speaks about things. I don't think Cody Rhodes is murdering hookers or not murdering hookers, depending on how you want to perceive the film and or book. But I also have to point out that a lot of Cody Rhodes' behavior is very suspect because it comes off, as you mentioned, as very forced. It comes off as very disingenuous. And when you're disingenuous, you can't be trusted. No one's going to ever doubt my sincerity about things because I will show you the less polite side of me. You will know that I have, a bit of a rudeness. I'm a rude boy at times, if you will. But when I flip it and say positive things about someone, I'm not going to be doubted because people know that I am, in fact, someone who says what he means and means what he says. Is Cody Rhodes the same way? I don't know. We're being speculative. But I would say right now, with all of the nonsense he kind of goes on and says at times, especially with some of the more very hallmarky, very lifetimey type of comments he makes about his wife, like it's fair to say that maybe he's not the most on the up and up as we like to think he is. Maybe he might be a little bit more of a handful behind the scenes, but that's speculation. Speaking of speculation, we got another TV show coming from AEW. Jesus Christ! If you thought, because AEW Dark is 2 hours, Dark Elevation is 1 hour, Rampage is 1 hour, Dynamite is 2 hours. That's 6 hours
Oh,
of TV.
oh, and Chad, don't forget about that All Access show coming at the end of the month.
Oh, Jesus Christ. So you got 6 hours of wrestling content, plus now an all access show. And now there's apparently a Saturday edition of a show coming that may be on at 6:05, which I actually kind of like. You're looking at 8 hours of AEW content alone for wrestling. Alone. Like, we're not talking about Raw and SmackDown, which would be another 5 hours. We're not talking about Impact, which is another 7 hours. Not 7. Yeah, that's right, because like 2 plus 5 is 7. So that's 7 and 8. That's fucking 15. And then you got MLW. That's 16. If you watch Ring of Honor, that's 17. I'm sorry, 17 hours of wrestling, and that's not even counting New Japan.
Exactly.
That's 18 if you watch the weekly Access TV New Japan stuff. 18 hours of wrestling in a week? Too fucking much wrestling.
Yeah, man.
12-year-old Chad is screaming at me. How dare you? We
I
have
was just
5 shows. How dare you?
I was just thinking the same thing. Like, this is the Toonami block of wrestling. We don't need it.
And like the thing with Toonami is they're 22-minute episodes stretched to 30 for commercials. They're on either 3 hours on the weekday or 6 hours on the weekend, depending on what era we're talking about. And it was, especially in the weekday, back in the good old days when I was in high school, you were in middle school, or maybe even elementary school. Jesus, that was the only place and time you could watch anime in a major format.
Mm-hmm.
That is no longer the case. So here's what the article says. It appears that another weekly AEW TV show is coming sooner than later. According to a new report from F4W Online, the news was first revealed on the Saturday edition of the Matt Man podcast by Andrew Zarian. According to the report, All Elite Wrestling and Warner Brothers Discovery are closing on a deal to add a third AEW wrestling show. It's going to be similar to Friday Night's Rampage with a 1-hour runtime. Zarian didn't know when the untitled show was going to be announced, but he noted that fans should expect the news within the next month. While it will be the third wrestling show, it will technically be AEW's fourth show. The third show is the promotion's new reality TV series, AEW All Access. The reality TV series was first announced on the February 22nd edition of Dynamite and will start airing on March 29th following this week's Dynamite. I think they meant that week's Dynamite because it's not the 29th. Each All Access episode is going to follow AEW stars on the week-to-week basis. The show will be featuring AEW talent, including Sammy Guevara, Tay Mello, Young Bucks, Eddie Kingston, Wardlow, and Saraya. Tony Khan is going to be featured on the show as well. AEW All Access is the second reality TV show series that AEW and Warner Brothers have done, with the first being in 2021 with former AEW stars Cody and Brandy Rhodes, and it was called Rhodes to the Top. Overall, it was very interesting to see when the show will be airing as the name. So basically, I'll say this. I didn't give a shit about Cody Rhodes' reality show. I didn't give a shit about when Impact tried to do their reality show after Impact Wrestling, the Beyond the Camera or Beyond the Lights, whatever the fuck it was called. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Because like they even had some matches on there. They had the Young Bucks versus Motor City Machine Guns match, the Empty Arena match on that show. Love the match, hated the show. So I don't know what AEW thinks they're going to do with this All Access show, especially considering they're doing it with Sammy Guevara, Tay Mello, the Young Bucks, Wardlow, not exactly the most interesting and captivating characters in AEW. Like, I sure don't want to see anything with Sammy Guevara. Unless he's getting hit in the face with a frying pan. I'd find that funny. I'd watch that show. Otherwise, I have no interest in it. Marcus, I don't need to ask you the question because I already know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Are we hitting peak AEW saturation considering they have 2 YouTube shows, a Ring of Honor show, 3 hours of primetime cable already, and now they're adding an additional 2 hours of TV?
Look, despite whatever narrative is out there about AEW, it's cool. It's solid. It's not, you know what I'm saying? It's not the Winter Soldier of wrestling promotion. Or wrestling content, I should say. Look, the fact of the matter is, like, it's good that they're getting that much opportunity to showcase that much of their product. But ultimately, we know that even too much of even a good thing is a bad thing. It can't be a bad thing. And I think it's leaning into that oversaturation point. And it feels like, I mean, the first conversation I feel like we had about the concept of oversaturation with the company was the talent that they was bringing in, and how they, you know, you got all those names, but you don't have anything to do with all those names. So now it seems like they transferred that mentality to the actual product of shows, and I get it. They're the new hotness, new kid on the block. They want to show off all the toys, or this is MTV Crib. They want to show you just how many fish tanks they got, but they don't show you the water bill. Um, and I get it, but like you said, man, this stuff gets exhausting. Like just with Impact, all WWE stuff a week, um, and New Japan. That's enough, really, for the year. You add anything else, you're being generous, and ultimately, people got real lives and stuff to tend to. So a lot of this stuff could do better being highlight clipped, which thankfully for YouTube, a lot of it is. But yeah, it's too much. It's too much for me personally. If I have somebody else, they might be orgasming right now. Some AEW fan facial, but no.
I, for one, think less is more, especially when it comes to television shows and wrestling. But there might be some people who aren't getting enough, and if that's the case, then more power to them. But this is a great way to kill whatever buzz you have. And frankly, this company needs to focus more on creating stars because they're getting to a point where they don't have a lot of names anymore. You know, Brian Cage getting ready to leave. Kenny Omega might leave. The Young Bucks might leave. But then again, I don't think the Young Bucks are a draw anyway. I think they're nepotism hires. They might be great in the ring, but I really don't think they're fucking box office draws anymore. I think they've ran their course. If those dudes took 2 years off, maybe they would come back as headliners. But right now, they're just giant doofuses. So they need to build up your Jungle Jacks, your Darby Allens, and your legs because they need to start moving that forward and stop relying on Chris Jericho and even John Moxley because he's pushing 40. You need to start getting younger guys in the main event scene. So that should be their priority, not AEW All Access. Speaking of All Access, though, Scott D'Amore is going to have All Access with Impact because he is officially the company's president. He is Impact Wrestling's president. If you're like me and Marcus and you're like, wait, he love it? He wasn't? What? You're not alone because like Marcus and I were like, wait, what? Apparently, even though Scott D'Amore left the company allegedly due to some issues with him and Scarlett Bordeaux, allegedly, that's the rumor.
Don Callis, you mean?
Don Callis, what did I say? Scott D'Amore?
Yeah.
No, Scott D'Amore did not do that. Don Callis did, allegedly. Don Callis allegedly made some unwarranted comments about Scarlett Bordeaux, which led to Scarlett Bordeaux and Karrion Kross leaving the company, and eventually Don Callis being allowed to leave as well. So D'Amore's ran a pretty tight ship. There hasn't been a lot of controversies under his watch. Callis was one. Jeff Jarrett, when he got drunk in Mexico and started fighting people, was one. But D'Amore wasn't in charge at the time, so like that wasn't his fault. But like they've not only kept the ship going straightforward, they've upped their audience, they've improved the ratings, improved their attendance. They've also re-signed guys like Jordan Grace and Eddie Edwards and Moose, so that they're clearly paying talent enough to stick around. Now, sure, some people have left. Some people aren't exactly, like Lady Frost left. She wasn't happy with her place, but you're allowed to not be 100% effective in making your employees happy. And as an employee, you're allowed to go, this isn't the scene for me. So like, I don't see anything wrong with that. And I think wrestling fans kind of need to get past that. But for the most part, they've been doing well. So I think this is a nice thing. And there were some minor changes as well behind the scenes, but it makes sense as to the ones that were happening. Like they have like a new marketing director, and somebody took over the head of Anthem now as a new president. And I think that the goal over the next 18 to 24 months may be to increase their profile in the combat sports arena by either buying another wrestling promotion to pair with Impact or to, fold into Impact, as well as doing the same thing with another MMA promotion. So, this could be a very big time for Anthem. And who knows, maybe Anthem and their company may want to expand their cable setup because they own Access TV as well. So maybe they'll start looking at purchasing up some other cable TV channels to improve their market reach. So, not really a huge thing to talk about, but interesting. Speaking of interesting, Ken Shamrock claims that his brash personality and hot-headed nature was the reason why he didn't get a WWE title run during his time with the WWE from 1990. I think it was like 97 to 99, like, or maybe it was like late 96 to 99, something like that. Marcus, do you think Ken Shamrock was held back due to his attitude? And also, follow up question: do you think Ken Shamrock would have been a good champion during the era of Shawn Michaels, Stone Cold, The Rock, and McFoley?
It's hard to tell with that era because those names, I mean, they're literally legendary, and Shamrock is a legend in his own right. Um, but I could see that. I could see his attitude being an issue. Um, Particularly if he's also seen as this outside guy. Like you don't, people could take that as you don't get to have an attitude when you're not technically one of us type deal. Um, which would be absurd in a lot of cases because of Shamrock's background and his, affinity for the sport and whatnot. But we've seen people take umbrage with far lesser situations and people. So, um, but yeah, it's hard to tell. Like I said, because those guys you just mentioned, absolute legends, personalities off the charts and whatnot. So, um, who's to say? What you think? You think Shamrock could have hung with those guys?
I think Shamrock would have done really well as a competitor, especially like had he stuck around heading into Kurt Angle's tenure. I think those two would have had magic together. Part of the problem is Ken was he was only in his mid to late 30s at the time. I think he was like 35 or so. But the problem was he was wrestling and competing in shoot grappling contests for years heading into his run at the WWE, and his knees were starting to go. It's why he didn't find success when he went back to the UFC as a grappler because his knees were shot. So I don't know if he would have been able to hang around with a guy like Chris Benoit because at that time Shamrock was not in the best physical health
Yeah,
with his knees. So I don't know if he would have been able to hang, like after 2000, but like in 97, 98, I don't know if you take the belt off of Stone Cold, but I definitely think that there was room for him before and after Stone Cold. Like I think in 99, had he stuck with the company, because he left in September, had he stuck with the company into November when Big Show won the belt, I think that's when you put the belt on Ken Shamrock instead. So I think he could have at least had a little run. How good it would have been, I don't know. That does seem like a very intriguing question, but I think in time maybe we could do some deep dives and figure out how he would have done as champion. I would say he would have been fine. He would have been as good, if not better, than Big Show in '99, and maybe held the belt longer because I
yeah,
think Show lost it in early January. I think he could have lost it maybe at Mania or been involved in the Mania four corners, four McMahon challenge thingy. But who knows? I think you could do the whole Triple H and McFoley feud in 2000 without having to put the belt in there, because I think that would have been just as fine. And then that way you didn't have to retire McFoley, and then you could have had him do his retirement match at WrestleMania, before he came back 3 years later.
hmm,
Speaking of coming back, Florida Championship Wrestling, actually Championship Wrestling from Florida, is now coming back to the Florida region, and it's being revived by Kevin Sullivan, Gangrel, and former ECW referee and manager Bill Alfonso. This is from a report of PW Insider. It was officially announced that the CWF will start back up courtesy of Coastal Championship Wrestling. Spearheading the venture will be former WCW booker and talent Kevin Sullivan, who is synonymous with the CWF in its glory days. The Taskmaster is appointed as executive producer and creative director for the promotion. The ownership of CCW and the team here have the spiritual successors to what we've created here in Florida, with Gordon Tully, Dusty Rhodes, and the countless others who have made championship wrestling from Florida what I believe to be the greatest territory in the history of wrestling. Helping him reestablish the territory will be former WWE star Gangrel and ECW fixture Bill Alfonso. Gangrel, who runs a school out of Florida, will serve as the head of talent relations and producer. Alfonso, who cut his teeth as a referee down in the original CWF, will produce and handle media for the brand. I'm a Florida boy, born and raised, and I'm just super stoked to be part of something that I've watched and loved my whole life, says Gangrel. CWF plans to run their first set of tapings in May, and the promotion is now in talks with the potential media distribution partners Despite the company making its return, it sadly does not own the right to its library, as WWE purchased it back in 2006. Marcus, I don't see the point in bringing back a territory when none of the talent are even active anymore in any official capacity. Nor do I think bringing in a territory and then finding a national or international broadcast deal makes any sense because it's a territory. It's called Championship Wrestling from Florida. This is a bad idea that I think is going to flop hard. What do you think about it?
I mean, normally I would say that, I never complain about guys having other places to work and develop, but ultimately, if you're looking to dive into the pond and you don't ever have any grand plans of becoming or avenues of becoming a big fish in a pond that's, you know, being taken up by a lot of space by obviously the established big kahuna, and now there's other kahuna that's planting fishes all over the pond, off of the one, with all these shows, it's just gonna be hard to maintain it. And if guys, realize that the hiring practices by companies aren't as lenient as in years past, when how many names we talked about have been routed off, like, oh, this person got picked off a magazine or such and such and such and such. You just mentioned somebody that got picked off of hell. You just talked about Enzo that got picked out of a photo shoot,
Mm-hmm.
or something off YouTube. So because if so many of these guys' dreams are, I've always dreamed about getting WWE, or I could use AEW as a lateral to get to WWE. It's not as hard as it used to be. And if you're one of these talents that, specifically, if you look at somebody like Cargill, who was basically learning on the fly every time we see her, um, I don't know how much of the industry mentality towards newcomers is even geared towards the territory anymore. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So.
You're not wrong. It's definitely going to be a very interesting experiment to see how it plays out. A lot of it's going to have to do with what their goals are, what they intend to do with the territory. Are they going to be looking to make stars? Are they going to be looking to bring stars in? Is it going to be a cross between the two? Are they going to look to partner with a bigger promotion like MLW or AEW? Are they going to get Impact involved? Who knows? Where they go after their first set of tapings, well, I should say where they go will be dependent on their first set of tapings, who they bring in. I would imagine that Gangrel will be a part of it as a talent because even though he's in his 50s, early 50s, I think he's like 52, he's still active. So I would imagine he'd be part of the show. But we'll have to wait and see. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw names like Wes Briscoe show up though. I think they're going to go for a very NWA vibe with the type of talent they go for. And I think somebody like Wes Briscoe and guys of that ilk would fit right in with what they're trying to do. So with that being said, we are done for the night. We were going to do our second show, the Making an Impact show. But due to time restraints, we can't do that this week. So we'll either do that Thursday or Monday, depending on availability. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be doing weeks 3 and 4 eventually. RealNerdCorp.com, RealNerdCorp.com. We're on Twitter at NERDCRP. We are on Twitter individually. Marcus, you can be found at Paradox Kid on Twitter, PARADOXKID.
That's me.
You can also find me on Twitter, at Chad Nerdcorp, CHADNERDCORP. If you want to find Marcus on Twitter's, he also has a different podcast he does called The True Penny Show, TruePennyShow. Find them on Twitter. They usually cover more international stuff. They like GLEAT, New Japan, and the like. So check them out. They're pretty good. And then you can find me on Instagram at Chad's Photo Hut, CHEDSPHOTOHUT. That's it for us this week. We'll be back next week for more wrestling goodness. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for checking us out. Thanks for giving us a chance. Remember, as always, to watch more wrestling. And Marcus, take us home.
Good night.